Hello writer, and welcome back to my life. Writer Wednesday, the day where I give you my tips and advice on the art and the business of writing and tell you how I do what I do as an indie author. Today we're going to talk about editing passes, how many of them I do, and what I do in each pass, and we're going to start right from the first draft. So on my actual timeline of producing a book, about 25% of the work hours go into the outline, 25% into the first draft, and the final 50% goes into my editing passes, with maybe 5% extra at the end for formatting and publication. And that back 50% is all of what I call post-production. In other words, turning the raw materials I've now got in my manuscript into a book that's ready to read. The first edit pass that happens, though, step 0 if you will, is actually an edit of my outline by my external developmental editor, Melissa Donovan. Melissa is a recent hire and she's only worked on Bloodlust so far, which should be coming out in September, but we plan to work with her on all future books of Underworld. Melissa takes my outline, which is usually between 10 to 20,000 words, and does an edit of it to reveal any story weaknesses she can see in the story's admittedly pretty summarized form. And after those issues are worked out, I sit down and write the first draft. What I generally try to do, though I don't always have the opportunity, is let the first draft sit untouched for as long as possible. More than a week, certainly, while I maybe work on the outline of the next book. But after a while, I will sit down and do my first few editing passes. Step 1 is my own broad developmental edit. In this step, I simply read the book cover to cover and seek out any major problems in the story that are preventing it from achieving what I want. I will actively try to restrain myself from correcting spelling or grammar or language because they kind of don't matter at this point. I'll try to just read the book through and check that it's a good translation of the outline I wrote and that it holds up story-wise. The editing technology contained in the story grid comes into full use here, and if you don't already own that book, I can't recommend it highly enough. On this first pass, I'll check that the story is progressing correctly through the 5 story commandments as a whole, and then also scene to scene. And rather than make the changes as I'm reading, on this first pass, I will just note down the problems. And then if no significant problems exist, I will go through and handle all my own notes on what needs to be fixed story-wise. Step 2 is getting and then implementing beta reader feedback on the book. At this point, the manuscript is just good enough for someone else to look at. My beta readers are not proofreaders, and I'm not expecting them to catch spelling or grammar errors. I want their feedback on the story. I'll export the manuscript to ebook files and send them to beta readers, and then of course, there's the waiting. In a perfect world, I would work on another book while I wait for the beta readers to send their feedback. However, sometimes I'm feeling a time crunch, so I'll jump on to step 3. In either case, I don't handle beta reader feedback piecemeal. I get all the responses, put them all together, and handle them all in a single editing pass that actually usually works out to be multiple passes. Step 1 is reading all of the feedback without touching the book and seeing if there's any common threads that multiple readers remarked on. Step 2 is taking each reader's feedback one at a time and going through the book, making any changes that I feel are indicated. Like I said, this means I sort of do multiple passes, but I really only consider it one pass since I'm not rereading the book or anything. I'm jumping to specific points that each reader has brought up. In terms of time commitment, this is almost always the shortest editing pass for me, and once I'm done with it, I'm usually very confident that the story is built on a good foundation and I'm ready to move on with the next steps. However, sometimes my beta readers have isolated huge problems in the story that require significant work, which brings us to the next step. Step 2A is a conditional step, meaning I only have to do it some of the time. Usually the first developmental edit and the beta read don't reveal any major problem in the story. There may be significant tweaks to how fast or slow a scene or a section of the story goes, but I won't be rewriting entire portions of the book or rearranging scenes. I've written 10 books of Underrealm so far, and on 8 of them I haven't had a major structure problem I had to rewrite for. However, on 2 of the books, Bloodlust and The Fire Mage's Vengeance, a combination of my developmental edit and mostly beta reader feedback did reveal significant issues that required major restructuring of the entire novel. In this case, which is again rare but it happens, I'll usually need 2 or more passes through the book, rearranging sections and rewriting scenes so that the whole narrative still strings along correctly. When this happens, it takes a long time, and all the editing passes afterward are even more difficult, so I always try to avoid it by outlining as well as I can and handling these issues in the outline. And once this restructuring is done, I'll go back to step 1 and do a new developmental read of the book to make sure I haven't created any new problems while trying to fix the old ones. So at this point in the process, I've either done 3 passes or 6, and the story foundation is strong enough that I feel like I'm ready for the next step. But those next steps will have to be covered in another video because this one is already way too long, so look for part 2 next week. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of how I start turning a manuscript into a publishable book. If you'd like to support what I do here, you should go pick up my awesome t-shirt. It'll also keep you from having to explain you're a writer because everyone will already know. Also, my patrons on patreon.com keep my YouTube channel ad-free, so if you want to be one of those awesome and incredibly attractive individuals, click the Patreon link and join up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye!